Welcome back to Dating Intentionally. I'm Talia. I'm sharing no nonsense advice for navigating dating and relationships with confidence and ease, whether you've been dating for a while or you're just getting started. I believe dating can be fun, especially when you have a solid relationship with the most important person in your life, you. I am excited to get into this topic because your relationship with yourself affects all aspects of your life, including your relationship with others and your dating life. At the root of dating with confidence and feeling secure is a strong relationship with yourself. So I hope by listening to this episode, you feel inspired to cultivate and nurture the longest relationship you will ever have. This is something you can continue to work on whether you're single, actively dating, or in a relationship, whether you're child free, you're a parent, or maybe in a big life transition, or whatever else you have going on. I'm sharing this information in today's episode based on research I've done on my own, books I've read on this topic, and of course, my own experience. And like anyone else, I have stuff to work on too, and I know I have a strong relationship with myself. As always, I hope that sharing my experience will allow you to learn and reflect on your own. This is an important topic because dating is hard, but it gets easier when you feel secure in who you are. Maybe you don't resonate with this message of you just need to love yourself. I don't resonate with that kind of messaging either. And like everything we talk about on the show, there's a lot of nuance here. Instead of, quote, just loving yourself, I want to help you take steps towards self acceptance and showing love to yourself. So, first, we're going to get into what it even means to have a relationship with yourself, why it's important, and how it affects your romantic life. Then, we're going to get into various ways of improving your relationship with yourself, and I'll also share what works for me. And I have a bunch of listener questions at the end. And don't forget to follow the show wherever you listen and connect with me on Instagram. I'm at dating.intentionally on Instagram and TikTok. And I love hearing from listeners. You can also find the video versions of all of my episodes on YouTube. Everything is linked in the show notes for you. You can connect with me pretty much everywhere. And I really do love hearing from you. So, what does it mean to have a relationship with yourself? Having a relationship with yourself means understanding your needs, emotions, values, and making choices that align with who you are, not who you think your parents want you to be, not who social media tells you to be, not the person you think your ideal partner would want. Your relationship with yourself starts with knowing who you are and moving through the world in alignment with that. So if you're listening to this and thinking, I don't know if I have a relationship with myself, or I still don't get what this means, here's how it shows up. It shows up in how you talk to yourself in your mind, how you view yourself, like your self image, and how you care for yourself, like how you treat your body and how well you know your limits, plus your ability to set and enforce boundaries. That's your relationship with yourself. Think about it like your relationship with a friend or family member that you love. You probably treat them with respect, you're in touch with them frequently, you make time for them and care for them. So replace that person with you. Do you treat yourself with respect? Are you in touch with yourself frequently? Do you make time for yourself? How do you care about yourself? Here are 4 common signs your relationship with yourself needs improvement. 1, negative self talk. Okay. That's when you frequently criticize yourself, you feel not good enough, or maybe you're like replaying past mistakes in your head all the time. So, the way I like to think about this is like, is your mind a nice place to be? Is it a nice place to hang out in? Mine definitely wasn't. Okay. I used to pick my body apart in the mirror. I used to berate myself for being late, especially when it wasn't in my control. And it's something I'm still working on, honestly. I used to mentally beat myself for being bad at my job when I was fresh out of college. My mind was just not a nice place to be at all. Is yours? Start paying attention to how you talk to yourself in your head, like how you react to your own words and actions, or how you interpret things that happen to you, like getting ghosted or someone doesn't laugh at your joke on a date. What story are you telling yourself around this stuff? That's how you know if you're engaging in negative self talk or not. And look, we all do it, by the way. Like, if you do this, it's so, so, so common. These are voices that we adopt from people who raised us, from messages we see online. Like, this is very common if you have negative self talk. It doesn't mean you're like doomed. There is a way to address this. And if you have this, you are normal. I wish it wasn't normal, but it is. The second one is lack of self care. So, if you are neglecting your physical, emotional, and mental health, then you might not have the strongest relationship with yourself. This can show up as like poor eating habits. Maybe you never exercise, you don't put any thought or work into your body. And I don't mean like losing weight, I just mean like feeding yourself and sleeping and just doing those basic things that you need to function. It's hard to have a good relationship with yourself when you're not caring for your body. So, something that I know I used to do in my early 20s was drinking a lot. I used to get blackout drunk like every weekend at the bars, and it wasn't good for my wallet, it wasn't good for my body, and I felt like shit most of the time. So, that wasn't a great example of having a good relationship with yourself. Like, I knew I had to make a change, and I'm glad I grew out of that and I don't anymore, but like it was hard to have a positive relationship with myself when I kept engaging in patterns that made me feel like shit. The third one is difficulty setting boundaries. People pleasers, this one's for you. You know who you are. This means you often put others' needs above your own and say yes when you really want to say no, or you feel guilty for asserting yourself or like saying no. This also can look like chronic stress or burnout from constantly saying yes to everything and thinking or believing you can do it all when you know you can't. This also looks like when you push yourself too hard without recognizing your limits. And that usually leads to some kind of physical or emotional exhaustion or mental exhaustion. When you're saying yes to everyone else, you are not prioritizing yourself. So, this is definitely a sign you need to improve your relationship with yourself if you have a really hard time saying no, if you're too scared of letting people down. We'll get into this more, but that is a very clear sign. The fourth one is seeking external validation. By the way, if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, that's me, that's me, that's me, no shame. Okay. I accept you as you are. I hope this episode will help you start learning to accept yourself as you are. Like, you are fine. Okay. If you know you're having negative self talk, you're not really good with self care, you have difficulty setting boundaries, and you are constantly seeking external validation, I see you and I'm giving you a hug right now. So, if we're seeking external validation, that looks like relying on others' approval to feel worthy, and you're making decisions, you know, going off of what other people say rather than trusting your own judgment. So, if you're like the kind of person who is always texting your parents or your friends or like the person you're dating for like permission to do things, or like, do you think I should do this? Should I wear this? Should I go to this place? Like, what do you think? It's one thing to rely on your support system, totally makes sense. But if that's what you're doing for every move you make in life, you are seeking external validation to make decisions. Also, like, if you only feel good about yourself when other people are telling you that you should, or that, there's some reason like they're congratulating you on something at work, or they're telling you your outfit is good, or like whatever that is, if you only feel good about yourself when you are getting that external validation, that is a sign you need to start working on validating yourself. I want to get a little deeper into why this is important. What I love about this topic is how connected these things are. Like, how we treat ourselves and how we treat others and how we show up in relationships, these are all connected. It's hard to be a good partner when you lack self awareness of your own emotions, when you don't know what your needs are or how to communicate them, and you don't know how to prioritize yourself. I think so many times we fall into this trap of thinking it's our partner's responsibility to deal with all that, but it's not. It's our responsibility first. When you have the ability to show up for yourself, it makes it easier to show up for other people and avoid interpreting every action from the person you're dating as a reflection of your worth. Right? Your sense of worth is coming from inside, not the people around you. When you have a strong relationship with yourself, you've shown yourself care and love, and you know that you're worthy of all that. So when someone isn't showing up that way for you, you're not going to take that as a message that you're not worthy of love. You're going to see it for what it is. It's just the wrong match. An example of this from my life was thinking that I wasn't worth marrying because my ex boyfriend didn't want to get married. I took his lack of desire for marriage as something wrong with me, and I kind of judged myself against that. So showing up for him was tough because everything I did was through the lens of, will this make him want to marry me? Instead of, will this bring us closer? Will this help us understand each other more? Everything I was doing, like the whole second half of our relationship, I was just operating from a place of like, will this move me closer to my goal of marriage, or will this move me away from it? And not, how can we be closer? How can we understand each other better? It's hard. And it took me a long time to get from a place of judging my self worth based on someone's desire to marry me to realizing my own self worth on my own that has nothing to do with whether or not someone wants to marry me. Right? It's like that was a journey. Okay. That wasn't just like a one night. One day I woke up and I didn't feel that way anymore. It really took a long time and a lot of work. And we will get into that in a little bit. Having a secure relationship with yourself makes dating a lot easier too. You have way more resilience, which you need in today's dating world when you have a secure base with yourself. When you accept yourself, it's easier to just show up as you, and that confidence is so hot. When you have compassion for yourself, it's easier to embrace all that awkwardness that comes with early dating. When you have the ability to enforce boundaries, you're less likely to get into situations where you feel hurt. When you know your needs, it's easier to say them out loud and communicate them, which you have to do in a healthy relationship. When you trust yourself and you know that you're there for yourself, it's easier to let things go when it doesn't work out. And when you have a strong sense of self, it's easier to understand that your partner's negative emotions or bad mood is not always about you. You can create more emotional safety and security within yourself. That's why this is so important for dating. And notice I didn't say anything about loving yourself. I know for a fact you don't need to be fully healed or fully love yourself to get into a relationship. What needs to be there is compassion, acceptance, and awareness. Forget being fully healed. It's not a thing. And some relationships are inherently healing. You can do this healing on your own when you're not in a relationship, when you're not dating, and you will do some of this healing work when you are in a relationship, and then it'll be undone, and then you'll have to redo it because the seasons of our life change and it's just not linear. But you can do a lot of this when you're not in a relationship, like when you're dating, and it'll be so much easier to walk away from things that aren't working when you do have a strong relationship with yourself. You'll have these strong boundaries. You know your worth. And you know that you can also give to someone without giving everything that you have. Like you're still able to keep something for yourself. And I think that's wonderful. All right, after the break, we'll get into how to improve your relationship with yourself. So let's get into some tips on how to improve the most important relationship you're ever going to have, and that is with you, obviously. Some of these you already know for sure. The unsexy stuff makes a difference. You don't need an expensive coach or a specific journal or one specific app. You don't have to have the perfect morning routine. And I'm brushing over this because you probably already know this. Just improving the quality of your sleep, paying attention to what you eat and how it makes you feel, moving your body on a regular basis, even if it's just walking or stretching, is a great foundation. Also, resting, which, hey, I struggle with resting a lot. So if you struggle with rest and taking breaks, you are not alone. Over the winter break, I had a breakdown because there was a day where I planned to work but needed to rest, and I literally cried because I was not mentally prepared to rest. Sleep, food, rest, exercise, these are part of a good foundation. These are four things that your body needs to function at its baseline, and you will improve your life when you focus on these four very simple but not easy things we need. All right, aside from the unsexy basics, here are some other ways to improve your relationship with yourself. The first one is me time, okay? How do you spend time with yourself intentionally, right? This isn't just like, oh, after work, I relax by unwinding in front of the TV and scrolling and like not paying attention to what I'm watching. And that's good decompression time, but that's not really what we're talking about here. That's not necessarily like building a relationship with yourself. So let's think of some other ideas that you can do that fulfill you, that actually fill your cup. And hey, you know what? If watching TV and scrolling on your phone is one of those things, fine. Right? Okay, like that can totally be something. If you don't know what these things are, a good way to get ideas is what you used to do as a kid. Okay, what did you used to love as a kid? Were you super into music? Were you into Legos, coloring? I literally have a coloring book and color pencils, and I love coloring. I was such an art kid. I love crafting. Whatever you used to do as a kid, that is something that's a good place to start for like activities you can do for your me time that's unplugged, that's just kind of zen, connecting with yourself. You don't have to meditate, you don't have to do yoga. Just do something that makes sense for you. It doesn't matter if it doesn't make sense to anyone else. Like if you want to build airplane models, if you want to like go out and collect seashells and rocks, I don't care. Whatever it is, it brings you these like very simple joys. A lot of ideas around me time these days are like self-care, like take a bubble bath, do a face mask, paint your nails. But I think what's missing is the fun, right? Like this should be fun for you. So whatever it is that's actually fun and pleasant for you to experience, enjoyable, engaging, that's the path you should be on. It doesn't have to be this like it doesn't have to be productive, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like you don't have to make yourself care about productivity, right? It doesn't have to be improving yourself in like a self-growth way. It's just literally what do you like to do for fun and are you having fun in that moment? Are you present? Are you in your body? It's like whatever takes you out of this like anxious thinking, this negative self-talk, whatever it is, it's like the track in your brain and puts you in the moment. That's what it's going to be for your me time. Another angle to me time is learning a new skill, right? This is a great way to connect with yourself and gain confidence, right? Learning new skills. It can be really addicting depending on what it is and how much you like to learn. I mean, here are some examples. In the last year, I learned how to lift weights, play guitar, read music again, make hot sauce from scratch, and I learned to enjoy the nerdy board games my husband loves to play. So, learning, I think, is a great way to, again, build confidence with yourself and have fun in a way that isn't like this kind of productive self-care, like expensive self-care that we've been fed on social media. And back to like how this helps you improve your relationship with yourself, I think when you carve out this time and prioritize it, you are showing yourself care. You are giving yourself a space to just be, to just exist without worrying and without your anxiety and all these other things that might be clouding your mind, right? You need a break from that. So that's how that is helping you have a better relationship with yourself. The second one is positive self talk. So we talked about negative self talk earlier. So this is more about how to inject positivity into the way you talk about yourself. To make positive self talk a practice, there are so many ways to do it. You can take the journal route, right? You can have a notebook, you can write something nice about yourself every single day. It doesn't have to be about your appearance, it doesn't have to be physical. I think it just has to ring true, whatever it is. You could be like, "I like how I'm a great friend to my best friend," or "I like how I showed up for my mom yesterday," or "I have great ideas at work," or "I feel creative," or like compliments to yourself, like, "I'm a good planner, I'm a good friend, I'm a good dog mom," whatever it is. Find yourself that feels true when you write it. Like, the wrong way to go about this is like writing down, "I'm the most beautiful person in the world," when you don't feel that way about yourself. It just like that is kind of just not going to connect. It's not really going to sink in as much. It needs to ring true. And look, there's also the root of standing in front of the mirror and saying things to yourself about your body. And this is like a body image thing. You don't have to say, like, "I love my stomach," if you don't. You can start smaller and say things like, "My body works." Like, "I can walk," or whatever it is, or "I have a nice smile," or "I like my nose." "I can taste food." Like, whatever it is, like that kind of affirms that your body's functioning. If you don't love your body, is a step in the right direction. Another practice that you can try is every time you think something negative about yourself, you have to think of something positive, or better yet, think of two things that are positive to kind of balance it out. Because for whatever reason, the negative stuff just sticks harder than the positive stuff. I mean, I know this from reading your comments. Like, it's like one negative comment will I'll be thinking about that for a long time, way longer than I will the positive comments. And I don't know why our brains do that, but I know it's really common. So I don't beat myself up about it, but it is definitely a thing. So you can counter your negative self talk by overdoing it with the positive self talk in a way. This is a great way to start rewiring your brain a little bit. A third thing I want to mention is The Artist's Way, which is a book by Julia Cameron. I love this book. I've talked about it many times. But basically, it is a guide to self compassion. And there are exercises in the book that help you embrace self-compassion and self-acceptance more. And for me, I know it made a huge impact on my healing and the way I feel about myself. There's this practice where you're supposed to write 3 pages every day in a notebook by hand and the first thing in the morning. And it's a lot of like positive things. And it's kind of like a meditation practice. Just doing that really changed my life. It helped me really ingrain self-compassion into the way I think about myself. I can't say enough good things about it. I will link that in the show notes for you if you want to check it out. And I'm sorry if you've heard me talk about it to death because I just really love it. Okay, the next thing on this list for improving your relationship with yourself is creating a gratitude practice. So, look, we know gratitude is apparently life changing. I mean, you can't go down a self help or self development rabbit hole or open a book about self growth without hearing about gratitude. And I think there are many ways to practice this. The daily journaling is definitely a good way to practice gratitude every day, or as often as you remember. You can do this in your phone, you can do this by hand. It doesn't really matter. Whatever works for you, whatever helps you stay consistent, I think is the key here. And I would say what works for me is daily journaling. I have a nighttime journal. It's a 5-year journal. So there's like 5 years in it, 2024 to 2028. And I write a few lines every night before I go to bed. And usually, not every night, but usually I include something I am grateful for. Another gratitude practice I have is with Johnny, my husband. We do our relationship check-ins every other week, and we always have appreciations for each other. So that's another way I've incorporated gratitude into my life. By the way, you can have weekly check-ins with yourself. You don't need to be in a relationship to have a weekly check-in. And that would be a wonderful way to practice gratitude on a weekly basis. You can just list 5 things that you're grateful for every Sunday when you're like on your walk or whatever you're doing. And that can be a way to just consistently practice gratitude. Another way to start improving your relationship with yourself yesterday is to learn to embrace the word no. Get used to saying the word no, tell people no, say no to things. You can practice politely declining commitments or other things that come up that don't serve your priorities, which right now is you. Okay, this reinforces your boundaries and your self worth. And this one I'm working on big time. And I think a lot of us are. I want to be the kind of person who says yes to everything, but it's not possible. It just isn't possible. And I get that the barrier here is that you don't want to disappoint people, you don't want to hurt people's feelings, you don't want to let them down. But what has helped me remember that it's okay to say no is knowing that people will get over it. And usually people don't care as much as you think, especially like if you're saying no in a polite, nice way, like, thank you so much for inviting me, but I can't make it, or thank you so much for inviting me. That's on my budget right now, or whatever it is. Like, oh, I actually don't have time to participate, but I appreciate you reaching out, or whatever it is, that is okay. They will get over it. I love the let them theory from Mel Robbins, which is just like, let people be disappointed. Let people be sad over it a little bit. It's okay. Like, they will be able to handle it, and so will you. When you say no to things that you don't want to do because you have other priorities, you are reinforcing that you are worth it, you are valuable, you care about yourself. So don't be afraid to say no to things that you don't want to do, that don't align with who you are, that don't align with what you want. You're allowed to say no. And the last one on this list for ways to improve your relationship with yourself is to treat yourself with kindness. What are nice things you can do for yourself on a consistent basis, whether that's every week, every month, every day, whatever it is? For me, it is carving out that time to rest. Even though I don't want to, I want to keep working. I love working. I love being creative. I love what I do. Like, I'm so lucky that I get to do this full time. But I also know that I am better when I'm rested. So I always make sure to have at least one full day off every single week, which I know it's like, why are you taking two? I'm an entrepreneur, I'm taking one. Treating yourself with kindness isn't just doing nice things for yourself. It is also how you talk to yourself and how you're interpreting how things and why things are happening to you. Like, if you interpret things in your life negatively, like if you're just like, oh, this happened to me because I'm insert negative thing here, that isn't not being nice to yourself. You have to flip it. Like, this thing happened to me because life happens sometimes, and it doesn't really have anything to do with my value as a person, right? That is also treating yourself with kindness. And I struggle with this so much. So if I can do it, I know you can too, because I used to be so mean to myself. Something that Johnny and I added to our relationship check-in is the question, how are we going to show up for ourselves this week? Because we talk about what we're going to do for each other to show love for each other, but I think both of us struggle with showing up for ourselves. So I included this question, and now we discuss, like, I'm going to do this for myself. Like, I'm going to go to the park with Coconut and like have a nice long luxurious walk because she's a slow walker, and not have to rush myself home, right? Like, that's what I'm going to do for myself this week. So those are some ways to treat yourself with kindness. I think that's the number one thing on this list to improve your relationship with yourself, is to be kind to yourself. It makes dating a hell of a lot easier too. So here's some other things that I've done to improve my relationship with myself. Again, this is just from my personal experience. This is what works for me. I hope it inspires you if you are still feeling lost on what you could do. The first one is solo travel, okay? Being alone. Being alone is key to improving your relationship with yourself and learning to enjoy your own company. And I love time with myself. I started traveling solo in college in the way of like just taking day trips. Like, I have to just like leave my college town, and like I get in the car, I drive like an hour away and like go sit in a coffee shop and like read and just wander around a new town. And that's how I started kind of building that muscle of spending time alone and really loving it. I love just like being by myself, and it's something I really miss. It doesn't have to be a big deal, by the way. You don't have to like go and travel by yourself. You can also take yourself out on solo dates. I love eating alone. I like go to the movies alone, shopping alone. There's so many ways you can spend time by yourself doing fun things, right? I wouldn't say errands really count, but like doing things that, like, you don't need to wait for your friends, or you don't need to wait for a partner to do the things you love. You can just go. I think it's important to see time with yourself as a luxury, even when you're single and you like obviously want a partner and you want to spend time with a partner and you're sick of yourself. Because the second you get into a relationship, a lot of that's gone. So just keep that in mind, and don't take it for granted. Another one is therapy. So I started CBT, that's cognitive behavioral therapy, in college, and I stopped after college. I graduated, then I picked it up again in 2019, and I haven't stopped. Right, I've done therapy for 6 years straight, and with like a couple breaks here and there, but that has helped me improve my relationship with myself, because I have like 1 hour, maybe 2 hours a month where I am just sitting with a therapist, kind of sifting through my emotions, trying to make sense of them, trying to figure out how my emotions and my body works and getting that mind body connection because it was not there. It did not exist. And I had to really rebuild it with the help of a therapist. And that also goes along with just learning how to be attuned to myself, right? I've always been in touch with what I wanted. Like, I've always been very decisive, but I definitely have not always been in touch with what I need as a person, whether that's a rest, which we know I'm bad at, or movement, or eating a certain way, sleep. I don't like sleeping. So I've had to learn how to be more in tune with what my body needs and being able to honor that instead of ignoring it and just pushing through. But being attuned to myself also looked like tuning other voices out, even people I respect. Like, I have done a lot of things in my life without the approval of my family and friends because they didn't think it was a good idea, but I knew it was. So I have that like trust and confidence in myself. And then, of course, along with that came trust and confidence from my people around me because they see that when I make decisions for myself, they're usually pretty good. So I can think of many times when I've done things my friends were like, "Don't do that," but it ended up being great. Like start a food blog in 2016. I remember all my friends were like, "Why would you do that?" And it ended up being very successful. So, yeah, being attuned to yourself is a great way to work on your relationship with yourself and tuning out other people because they don't always know. Another one on my list is practicing being kind to myself. So, that for me looks like shutting down negative thoughts very quickly. And that's something I've really worked on in the last year. So, I used to berate myself for mistakes, especially being late. If I'm berating myself for being disorganized, and I try to be really organized, but of course, some things fall through the cracks. I used to be really hard on myself for these things. And now I just kind of in my head say, stop, like, hey, stop. And I try to reframe my thoughts when I can. For me, being kind to myself looks more like shutting down negative thoughts more than injecting positivity into my mind. But shutting down negative thoughts has helped me a lot. So maybe it'll help you too. And the last few things on my list are taking care of myself. So, like the basics I was talking about earlier, getting out of my comfort zone, which helps build trust, and being decisive, which is super, super important. I mean, being decisive is part of building trust with yourself, like just making decisions and trusting it'll work out, which it usually does. So, I hope this helps. There are so many ways to show up for yourself, be kind to yourself, and I'm just trying to inspire you with different ideas on how to do that. So, how will you know when it's working? Well, you'll know it's working when you feel less anxious about pleasing other people or meeting their impossible standards, and you'll feel a little bit more content with who you are. You'll trust your abilities and decisions even when you're faced with challenges and uncertainty. Saying no when necessary will feel more natural, and you'll be able to respect your own limits without so much guilt. You'll also notice and appreciate small positive moments in your life and find joy in your own company. Mistakes and setbacks won't define you as much. That's a big one. You're going to be able to learn from them and move forward with compassion for yourself, right? So instead of berating and attacking yourself for making mistakes or having these setbacks, you're going to have more compassion and it's going to be a lot easier. You'll know it's working when you treat yourself with the same kindness and understanding that you would a close friend or someone else that you love in your life, right? Do you treat yourself with the same kindness that you have for other people who you love? And finally, another sign you know that work is working is that you are more free to express your true self without fear of judgment or rejection. I want to come back to our why really quick. Why are we doing this? Doing this work will make relationships easier to navigate and calmer because you have a strong, secure foundation with yourself. Setbacks in dating won't feel as heart shattering, and showing up as yourself will feel easy and natural and good. So, I want to get into some listener questions. The first one is, how do you meet your own needs? So, the first step is knowing what they are, right? Being able to tune into your needs without judgment is the first step. The second step is prioritizing your needs over the needs of others, like we've been saying, setting those boundaries, right? Making your needs important. It's like that idea of putting your oxygen mask on before others in an emergency. And it's also being okay with your needs not making sense to other people. Like I was saying, I love being alone. I love solo travel. Johnny doesn't. He doesn't get it. He doesn't really understand it at all. But I need it. And I don't really care if it doesn't make sense to him. And he luckily accepts that about me. And it all works out. Also, making a plan to meet your needs, right? Like, again, back to solo travel, it's not something I can do right this second. So I have organized something for myself to do in the future. So it's like I plan to meet that need in the future and I feel prioritized, from myself. So, those are some tips for meeting your own needs. I hope that helps. Second question is, how do you spend quality time with yourself while in a long term relationship? So, it all comes back to boundaries, right? Telling your partner, hey, I need like one night a week to myself or one day a month to just do me. That's totally fine. Maybe you need like an hour a day, whatever it is for you. That is totally okay to say, and I think it does become a challenge to carve that time out of your relationship when you're in one, especially when you live together, especially when you're married and you're more of a unit. It's like you do have to kind of fight for that time, and it's okay. Your partner hopefully will be receptive and supportive of this. What that looks like for me, once in a while, I spend an entire Saturday alone, and Johnny just does whatever he is doing, and I'm off doing my own thing, and it's glorious. I really enjoy that. So I think it's actually healthy for your relationship to prioritize some time alone. So keep that in mind. All right, the next question is, what do you do when spiraling? So spiraling is like when you're just caught up in these negative thoughts and negative emotions and you feel like it's never going to work out and your anxiety is taking over. Maybe you're feeling like a little shaky or you're crying or, you're like visibly upset somehow, or maybe not. Maybe you're just like completely stonewalled and shut in. There are a lot of ways to break out of this spiral experience. You'll know when your mind is on a loop and you're just thinking the same thing over and over and you're stuck on a specific idea or thought or narrative. And there are a couple ways to do it. So, what works for me and what works for a lot of people is a state change, right? So, that's like literally moving to a different room or a location. That could be as simple as going outside for a walk, or just again, going to a different room. Usually, movement helps. And I think it's so important to recognize feelings versus thoughts and how often we try to intellectualize our feelings instead of avoiding them. I know I do this. Feelings can be scary because sometimes they're just overwhelming, like it's too much inside. But what helped me and what might help you is remembering that feelings are energy and they need somewhere to go. Movement is a great way to let feelings and energy flow through your body. So, again, walking, rocking, stretching, running, exercise, also dancing, there are so many different ways to move and kind of let that energy flow through your body. Growing up, we are taught in so many ways that feelings are bad or not appropriate or weak, but feelings are biological. It's just part of being human. And when you're spiraling, another thing that can help is acknowledging what's happening without judgment. Like, okay, I am currently spiraling. I am currently on a thought loop. I am stuck in this story. You just say it to yourself out loud or in your head without judgment. It's like a neutral observation and you make it okay. It's okay that I'm crying. It's okay that I'm sad or angry or stressed, whatever it is. And that's the beginning of allowing your emotions or feeling to take up space and letting that energy move through and getting out of that spiral. I think part of why we spiral is due to not letting the feelings really exist. We're trying to fight it with our thoughts, so we're spinning. Way to get unspun is to let the feelings happen. Feelings are temporary, right? They will dissipate and you will have a new feeling after that bad feeling. The next one is, why is it so hard to look after yourself? I know there are a lot of ways to think about this, but I think that some of what contributes to this is one, time. We work a lot, right? Friends, family, and work. It can just be hard to find the time to look after yourself and take care of yourself. And we need to acknowledge that, like, life is really busy sometimes, and you might not always have time to take the long shower or to have the nap or whatever it is that you need. Another one is pressure or influence to focus on things that don't actually matter in the big picture in the long run. The pressure to do it all. And also just the fact that the basics aren't sexy, right? The four basics of sleep, exercise, food, and rest are not sexy. They're not gonna that's not what sells on TikTok and social media, right? So that's why I think it's really hard to look after yourself in a real way. Also, a lack of boundaries. That does make it hard too. Another question I got was, how do you remove negative self talk? So I said this earlier, just say stop in my head when I have like the negative self talk going, like the negative track. That's worked really well for me recently. And I will be vulnerable here and say that my inner critic, like my self critic, takes the form of internet trolls. In my mind, I'm viewing my negative self talk that comes from me as comments on Instagram or online, and I have to like shut it down. Again, I just say stop or no. My therapist told me to take an imaginary scissors to cut the thought. So that's like another thing you can do. Like if you're having a negative thought, you can kind of take imaginary scissors and snip, right by your head as if you're cutting a thread. And so you're like, I'm not thinking that anymore. And I used to do that for a while when I was trying to get over my ex and he would pop into my brain. I just like cut, and and that would be my signal to think about something else. Also, another thing that works is generally challenging your negative thoughts. Whose voice is that? Where did that come from? How can you reframe this and what is it true? Is it even true? And eventually, with this type of thing, these practices, you start to rewire your brain, like creating a new groove, a new neural path in your brain. And I can say for me, my negative self talk has definitely decreased doing these practices, right? Saying stop, cutting the thread, challenging those thoughts, and of course, countering those thoughts with positive ones. All right, the last question I got was, do you have any tricks to help with the low self-love times? The times where you're just feeling down in the dumps about yourself. So I've talked about this on the pod a few times, but I literally treat myself like I am my own parent. Like I'm both the kid and the parent. And I'm like, okay, if I was a parent to me, what would I do? And I do that. Sometimes it's like, okay, you're going to bed early, or like, okay, you're going to leave your phone in another room and you're going to read. It's kind of like taking that authoritative parenting voice with myself. And that is how I can bring kind of care for myself in those low self-love times. Like, okay, like what you need to do to feel good right now is to put down the phone, go to and go talk to a friend, go talk to your husband, go take a walk, go play with your dog, go just maybe not out in front of the TV for a while, that's fine. Like I kind of have to just step in as my own parent and pick myself up. That's one of many ways that's my trick for my low self-love times. Whew, this was a long one. I want to thank you for listening if you got this far. We're about to wrap up. And I just want to say when we think about improving our relationship with ourselves, the point isn't to get to this perfect place. Like you never will. You'll never be 100% confident or secure or whatever it is you're trying to be, but you can improve. You can take steps to become more confident and more secure and have more compassion for yourself. It's not a linear journey and it's a lifelong journey because you might have it basically figured out in one season of your life, then the seasons change and you have to figure it out all over it again. It's okay. That's where practicing self compassion will be so important and helpful because through all the change and all the things you're going to go through in life, you can always be compassionate and kind with yourself. So that's all I got for you today. Thank you so much for listening. I love it if you share this episode with someone who is navigating dating and might need a little confidence boost or some tough love. If any of these episodes have helped you in your journey, you can help me by leaving a stunning review on Apple or giving Dating Intentionally 5 stars on Spotify. I really appreciate it. Once again, I'm Talia. This has been Dating Intentionally, and I'll catch you next time.